for you. So thank you for taking your time.
Thank you. I really don't know what to say at this point.
Yeah. Actually, let me do it here. So I won't take long because it's late for you. And so I just want to say a few things quickly along. And Kaka, are you there too?
Yeah, I'm here, David, and thank you. I probably just want to invite Pauline to be here with us. I'm still expecting Ashley to join Univa and Sosura from India. But basically, maybe you can start with introduction so that you can know who are here. I can give Pauline to introduce herself. I think, yeah, it's in order to do that.
Yes. Okay. So India is really late, right, Univa? So I think that's going to be because she must be like midnight, past midnight or something. But anyway, let me just share my screen. Shall I start talking, Kaka? Should I do that? Hello?
I think Kaka just left, then Ashley joined.
Oh, okay. Oh, Ashley joined. Okay. Hi, Ashley.
Hey, David. Hi, Pauline.
Good. Hi. So, what I want to do is get people together and start thinking about as we go forward into COP this year, and as we go beyond COP. And what I want to do is to recruit all the groups together and think about how we can be together in a way that responds to each other and face what we're going to see, because as everyone knows, COP is going to be in the heartland of oil and gas, or the dragon's den of oil and gas, and it's going to be basically a trade show that's chaired by them. But what that does for me is it gives us a perfect opportunity, an opportunity we cannot miss. And next year is also a year where there is an Olympics, and so the two combined together is as good as it can get as far as the climate movements and activities concerned. So this is an invitation to join in an adventure, and it's a remarkable adventure. So what is that adventure? The adventure is for us to come together with all the people in the world and say, we can do better. We can do better than the discussions at COP and the problems that they faced, or the stalemates that we keep running into, because we as people can come together in the way that governments always feel they can't. And we can come together because we know how to give and take to each other. We know how to be better. And that's what the planet is calling on us to be. That's what the climate situation is. I want to turn that from saying as a crisis and turn that into us seeing that as a way for us to respond for a better tomorrow. Okay, so how do we do that? I've got a bit of an outline here, and this is sort of this part where we go on through. I'm going to describe a little bit of what that final looks like, and I'm going to bring up a different document for that. This is an invitation to an adventure, and the invitation to the things that give us joy. You might have heard me talking about that before. I've been going on about it for a long, long time. About a year. Okay, so this is a thing we call transformational ownership. I'm going to jump right into the bottom of this. So what I'm going to do is to jump into a diagram here. And the situation is oil, gas, and coal. produce about $150 billion a year to their shareholders. So if you think about the sum of money for climate finance and how we can't agree on 100 million, that's $150 billion here. And this is what we're going to do. And it's entirely possible to do this. It's just a matter of whether we can come together and say we do it. If you take all the money we spend in the world and you take 0.3% of it, which is one day in a year's worth of sales. So every year we take effectively 1 day in a year, we say that's a day in which we invest back into the planet, we maintain it. That money is about $150 billion. So if you take that money from this, you can give it to the shareholders and you say, you've got your money, we're going to take control of the companies. You don't need these to go through that way. So what do you do with this money? This money, you give it to everybody equally in the world. When you do this, what happens is you basically give the 8 billion people in the world just under $20 a person. So, $20 a person is not insignificant for people in Kenya, but if you're in a community of, say, 50 people, that's $1,000. That's actually quite significant for what you can do in terms of what you want. And the essence, why do you just do that directly? Is because everybody has an opinion about how you should use this money. So give it to everybody so they can do that. And what you've just done is you've taken money from the richest people who spend the most and given it to everybody in an equal way. So you've met that climate financing in a way. But you've done a lot more than that. What you've also done is you've broken this link here between the owners of oil, gas, and coal and the profits that they need, because they need feeding too. They've got children and they've got schools that they've got to pay and all those things. And you say, actually, that can come from here. Now, we ask you to give up on that control. So we take hold of that ownership and that profit of that ownership. So to control production. And now you've completely changed the arguments about what happens with your climate and all those things that we do. Because the problem at the moment is we are busy trying to do everything we can to heal the damage that's been done, but the flood of the poison still keeps coming through. And so whatever we try, it just floods along. And unless we can stem the flood, we can't do that. And we can't stem the flood because the people who owns it says we need it, we need this money, so we've got to control that and keep that going. Now you've changed that. Okay, so what can you do if you've changed that? So let's think about the first thing is to say, we can limit the total amount. At the moment, everybody says we need to be 1.5 degrees. We're not going to make 1.5 degrees except for something like this. And I'm going to explain why this makes it possible. We are probably not even going to make the 2.7 degrees. The 2.7 degrees is basically the scenario where countries meet their 2030 commitments with moderate action after. It's actually quite an ambitious one. The current policy takes us to way over that, takes us much closer to 4 degrees. 4 degrees is a complete disaster. 2.7 will be a complete disaster, but the point about this is something which can be acceptable, and then we can improve. So if you now take control of the production, and you can now go along and says, let's limit the amount we use. What do we limit it to? We limit it to what we have committed to. All the countries are committed to 2030. So we make sure we limit to that. If you actually look at how much oil, gas, and coal that implies, that basically means 68 years of current use. And if you then actually go along and look at the quantity that implies, that's about half of our coal reserves in the world, but it's twice the amount of oil we have. And it's like 35% over the amount of gas we have. So it's more than what we've got already. That's why Namibia is so busy exploring for new oil. And this year alone, they've found about 13 billion barrels of new oil. That's why there's all this expansion going on, because the current most conservative scenario that we're going to get is going to need us to have almost double that. So this then sets it as a limit that basically says no one should reject because it's already beyond what we've got. So that makes it good as a limit. But once you do that, things change. So if you now buy a piece of land or a house or whatever it is, the first thing you do is you make sure you know what you've got. So you inventory everything. When you do so, you go and you label it all. I've got a tree here, and I've got a plant here, and I've got a rock here, and all the rest. So you label all of the oil, gas, and coal, and you basically tokenize them all. And the next thing is then you say, if you produce that bit, then you need a token for that corresponds to that one. So you give the tokens to all the countries because we still need this stuff. But now production is changed. You're saying you have to tell me how much you need, and you have to give me the tokens corresponding to those, and then I will produce it for you. That says it's not out there on the shelf. It's not like the sweets that's at the end of the supermarket aisle that's always left there to tempt you to buy it. Because now you have to plan ahead. And so immediately it changes the ways the people attitude towards it. How do you give it out to all the countries? Every country needs to feel they're secure about their energy, otherwise nothing works. Otherwise you'll get rejected. So you say 10 years of current use. No questions asked. Every country gets the same. That takes us to 2030, basically. That says, we still need all of this to meet our 2030. And if we meet our 2030 commitments properly, you won't use all those 10 years. That's what it means. And then we take another 30 years worth, which basically is all the reserves that we have. And then we say, we give this out to cover the development gap. So if you take Kenya, which I think Africa, which has the countries in Africa has like a GDP per capita about $2,000. US and Europe have like $55,000. So the calculation I did is assume that US and Europe increases their GDP per capita by 1% every year for 40 years. That gets you to a big number. And then you say Kenya, people in Kenya needs to get there too. But it must also get there compensating for the population as it grows along, because population in on the African continent is still growing at about 2.5%, whereas in the US and Europe is coming down by a bit less than sort of, 1%. So you've got this difference along. What that means is countries which are more impoverished at the moment get more of these tokens. And when you add it up, basically something like 80+%, 85% of the countries which are most impacted. Sorry, the other way around. The countries which are most impacted have like 85% of those 30 years worth of tokens. US and Europe gets like 2%. And that's what you want. Because now if they stay energy hungry, they need to come to these countries and says, can I buy your tokens? That's where the value generally is. Can I buy them because I will need those and I need to keep burning them and so on? And these countries can now name their price. So you've turned the whole climate finance the other way around. You've turned it on the basis of what is actually driving the problem. If you're causing the problem, you need to pay for it. Who do you pay? You pay the ones who are most impoverished and most affected effectively through that. But what you can also do is you can say, we actually think it's better for us not to release these at all. You can keep them. I'm not selling it. You can do one thing one step further. You can go that step further of saying, I'm actually going to retire them so that they can't be used at all. So you go back to the group and you say, we're retiring it. That's it. That's all the end of it. Now you can have genuine offsets. So if someone is asking for the potential to have an offset, I want to take a flight, I'm going to offset this. At the moment, that offset is, say, I grow some mangroves along the coast of Madagascar or something. But what happens is as the oceans get warmer, these mangroves die and the offset disappear, but I've burned my coal. Now you never have that because you actually got this amount that will never be burnt. So it means that every action that you take now genuinely counts, no matter how small, because you can't say the neighbor is going to just carry on doing whatever he does and it will just wash away what the good that I'm trying to do. You've dammed that poison. And what's more, that gives a value to not producing oil, gas, and coal. People can then say, actually, we value that more, we'll pay you to do that. So, and then there are other things about what happens with coal going into gas, what happens with looking after the miners and their families, and what happens to the countries that have oil and gas and how they actually can benefit from this. So that's the idea. So that's the basic idea. And going back to this thing where I say now is a great year for this is because if I think about going to the 30th of November where COP is, that's where all the people, that's where the events are. So here, what I want to do is to call on people and recruit to be part of a call and response around this time. So that around this time, as we go on through, we can say, no matter what happens in COP, we can go around as groups around the world to say, we can do better. We know how to create a better tomorrow. And actually to bring this out forward. But to do that, we can't just be all calling for this or calling for that. We actually have to act somewhat in unison, and that's what I'm wanting to do. And if I may, I just play this piece of music with Richard. And this was the young girl there. This was, I was visiting Padua in Italy last year for a friend's wedding, and they had a Ukrainian refugee staying with them, and she's a pianist. And this was the piano conservatory in Padua, and they're very, very good. And they had this open concert along where they're playing a piece. And I want to talk about this piece because this is for me a piece where it's a call and response from different parts of it. And there's a theme that goes through, which is like the climate. And what I see as what we want around COP is this kind of thing, but from everything going around all around the world. We don't need to be in COP. In fact, we're better not being in COP, because being in COP taints you for this year long. But what this does is allow all of our voices and actions to come together in a song. And I'm going to talk through it in this way. So it starts, you know, with a big event and a big thing. It's going to anyway. I'm just going to rush it along a bit. Can you hear it? Before I go on, can you hear it?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a piece by Mozart. I'm sure you sort of know. But what happens in it is that if you listen to it, the way I hear it is there's a theme that goes on through, and that theme is the climate, is the planet calling us. And then there are different voices in it. And the way they come on through as you go on through is they're all individual separate voices, and then they kind of come together. So I see it like a ballet, like a dance. So that's the theme calling on us. And they come on, and it brings on everybody onto the stage into that. And it's just something is happening. It's a party, something's going on. It's the planet calling on us. You have to respond. And now you begin to get the movements of the responses coming. And so the groups are moving now. They are coming on alive in that way, and they're all on their own. And now you see individual ones of them, and they're showcasing what they're doing, as you yourself are in your different groups. And others are watching, and they're kind of like interested, and they come follow to them. They're attracted to it. And then another group is showcasing that, and those little feet are kind of moving along and saying, look at me. And they go. And this is going around the world. I see it as, all of the activities we're doing, we're saying we're doing all of these things and watching. And then we watch that little bit where go dun, 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 is all of us supporting each other as we go, and we build up and we start coming together along now. And then the planet calls on us again and is saying, be there, listen to me, come back and join me. And then now, the second time round, the movements come together and we're no longer kind of like dancing alone, but we're being pulled together into that. And that's how I hear it. And this is a song that I think is kind of think of when I think about what happens as we go into the COP event, is I don't want the focus just to be on the COP event, but I want it to be a call and response that we prepare from around the world to say we can do better. We're able to do better. We have a plan and we're going to come along together to that. And this is where it comes along now, and we are all dancing together and saying, actually, you know what, we have hope. And we have a promise we can give back. So here it's and the themes repeat along, but now we're familiar with it, and we actually all dance together. We become all part of that same song together to say we can do better. We're joyful, we're cheerful, we are hopeful, and here is why, because we know how to do this, so everybody gains. So in that way, I know this is probably quite unusual. Probably you don't hear people talking about what we're going to do in COP in that way, but we steal the show. So that's the idea, is together being coordinated around thinking about how we're going to respond to the situation there and having the plan that what we call transformational ownership gives us that control. And when you think about that, what that means is when we allocate resources in that way, the tokens for production in that way, when that first 10 years go, in terms of how far we can go, and those remaining 30 years are allocating in proportion to that development gap, which is what we need to do, then the countries together, which are most affected, can join together and say, we're not going to use these. That's the choice. And if you do that, you shrink that 68 years down to about 12. You meet your 1.5 degrees. And you immediately change the conversation to say, we can actually meet that 1.5 degrees. We're going to lock it to that, and we'll see how we do by doing this. And we now give ourselves hope. We now give ourselves time, because we now have this ability to say how production will go. We can stamp the poison that's coming. We can allow ourselves, our communities, and our planet to heal. And we give ourselves the ability to do that. So that becomes a call around the COP so that we can steal the show. But that's not enough. We have to continue on past because we have to make this real. OPEC has a meeting in the first quarter, likely. They have about 3-4 meetings a year of OPEC and non-OPEC finance ministers, basically. And they're ministers from sort of around the world, and essentially lays out a plan for the production over the next year. Essentially, this is the meeting that we then have to go to face the oil and gas and coal industry and say, we have a different plan for this. To get there and do this, what are we going to need is basically we will need politicians from the impacted countries. We will need representatives at those high levels to be able to go along and say, look, listen to this plan. Listen to the world as we are. And then the next thing that happens is in this gap, we prepare. And I haven't finished doing this. We prepare about the specifics. We get the finance companies to look at the genuine securitization. We speak to all the big institutional investments. We talk to people in their communities everywhere. We talk to activists everywhere. And then on the 16th of April, the Olympics starts with this torch relay. So we join on with that and say that the Olympics with this torch relay is carrying that hope of humanity around the world. And so we are going to do that by carrying this along with it. And we carry that on through so that everybody everywhere knows about what this is about. Because this torch goes around the world and we use that to be the light that we carry on through. And we go on to eventually the Olympics final, and we're successful. We get businesses to agree. They will contribute. We get people to agree. We get the young people. And this is the most important and powerful thing. Because this is a commitment over decades along to spend our money and recognize that the money that is spent is what damages the planet. And a portion of that has to go back, has to be invested back to protect the planet and maintain it. This means that the ones who are going to pay the most out of this are the young people. You are the ones who contribute in the sense that when you start a business in 10 years' time or whenever, you are the one who needs to say, I see that the business that I do has to contribute a part of it, of what it is, one day out of a year's intake, back into protecting the planet, into maintaining it. And that actually is hugely powerful because it says to young people, the anxiety you feel, actually, you have the power to change that, to take that away, to give yourselves hope about how that future that you face is actually yours and can be yours to control, and that's what it is. So that voice is most powerful in all of this along, in getting this to go. So that's the idea, that's the aim, that's the plan. Between now and COP, what I want is for COP to be able to have that piece of music. If you want to listen to that piece of music, it's Mozart's Eine kleine Nacht, Eine kleine Nacht music, little like night music, and it's a beautiful little piece. So it's just written by Mozart, but the thing about it, it has two violins, viola, cello, and double bass. So it's all those different parts that are coming in, all the different voices, and that's what we are. From India, from Europe, from Kenya, from Uganda, from America, and all those things, is to be able to bring all those voices together, showcase ourselves, and actually to dance together in response to all the things that are going to be coming out of COP. So that we actually end up stealing the show. And that's the idea of this. That's the reason why we need this, is because we need the finance world to get serious about it afterwards. And the finance world gets serious when they can see that there is a real market. And they can see that when there's a real market, when they actually see people calling for something. And that's where this fills in. If we get the finance world serious to start thinking about that, then what happens is, together with the kind of political call, which is already going on, that we have to do something about the production of oil and gas and coal, we can actually then take it to face them in the way that we otherwise wouldn't be able to. So I'm down here, Climate Emergencies Day, 22nd of July. We're thinking about how do we recruit. We have this idea that we want this, the idea where you take a football and you try and spin it and keep it on your hand, you know, as a transformation. It's also a fun thing to try and do. You know, you can try with a piece of paper. It's very hard because I'm not very, oh, no. And so you have something that is changing the world, that you can say, you know, the climate clock is running out. Can we keep the world spinning? Can we let nature win? You have those things where different groups can do that. I have here also about the 4th of October. For me, this is really important because this is the point, and Ashley is here, when the Vatican released the letter, that call to people. And so what I want to be able to do on the 4th of October is to be able to go back to the Pope and say, the world is listening, we're responding. And to take that forward and say, here is a way. And this works because the whole world comes together. It only works because the whole world comes together. And to police it, it is our own responsibility to say, because now you've tokenized all of the production of oil, gas, and coal. You know when amounts which have not been tokenized, which means that they are from outside of this, is being produced. You can track off those. You can then say, sorry, you know, my glasses here, that's tainted. And I can now have the ability to say, I want to buy that or I don't want to buy it. And it gives that ability up to people to choose. So none of it is forcing anyone. It allows country to make their own choices. It gives the balance of power to the populations that actually needs that balance of power in their hands. It changes the economics of it. It allows it possible to make money by not producing, so that you can still go along and have good livelihoods where you're actually being paid as opposed to by producing oil and gas and coal, by not producing it. And it answers the problem about what happens with Saudi Arabia, what happens with Venezuela or Brunei, or all these countries which have a lot of oil, gas, and coal. And it deals with all the questions even about what about those communities, the miners and their livelihoods. And the answer is very simple. We take over the companies, but we want them to be profitable eventually. If you look at a company like Amazon, which is a big company in the West, perhaps even more than in other parts of the world, it started off as a bookseller. It now makes most of its money out of, believe it or not, being a cloud computing service. So it has transformed. So these companies will transform to others. And for that to happen, as it goes on through here, we as the owners will invest in those communities and those people in the way that current owners won't. So it tackles all of those aspects and deals with them. Okay, I've talked for too long. I want to call out and say, can you help? Would you be interested? So that around the time of COP, we gather all the groups in this dance that we're ready for, ready to respond, and actually showcase and be able to end up saying, we are stealing the show from COP, from what's going on there. Because we know what's going on there. They're going to talk about how it's okay to keep pumping. We just have to work on more carbon storage and everything else. The fact is that those things only work if we can stem the flow. If we don't stem the flow, they just encourage more flow.
Yeah. David,
Yeah.
I don't know whether I can probably take a little bit and maybe. I want first of all to say thank you for you guys joining. I know we know that one of the greatest enemy we have currently on planet is, of course, the issue of oil, gas, and coal, and also the issue of fossil fuels that we are facing. All of us are fighting to ensure that we can restore our planet back to where it was before. So I just want to acknowledge the presence of my colleagues that are here, that we've worked with them in different capacities. And I know that we've really fought and we are really still continuing to push until to see justice liberated. I know that someone like Ashley, Pauline, we've been really thinking on how we can be able to address the issues of COP to some capacity. thought of a petition in that line. And David, probably, I know we have a bigger team on the other side, but today we probably I need to introduce this team because they are, it's actually from one of the top cream of working groups, mostly in Kenya. And that's why I thought that we should first do a small group of us. They need to get what this is all about and how this concept works, so that they can also grasp the idea and run with it. And because most of the young people that are in this meeting now all have the social capacity to influence policies and also engage young people and also other people to join us in this campaign. So I will just want to probably, David, maybe in 3 minutes time, to give each of them maybe a minute to say what they do and who they are. And then in that line we can continue to bring more people on board. So maybe Ashley, if you just maybe start off.
Thanks, Kaka. Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley from Laudato Si Movement, and happy to be here to talk about this wonderful plan. David, thank you so much for the presentation, and you've brought the concept very clearly. And it is doable, especially given that we can start organizing now. And the transformational ownership really made sense to me in particular because of the letter, and specifically when you brought the pianos. And I was just thinking about that scene in the film where Dr. Lorna Good is like, it's like a choir, it's all singing together, and it is a very impactful way to be able to shape the narrative around how we can take ownership of these resources and really promote solutions and say, like, we are here and we are here to do something about this, and start that movement in a way that is going to be unexpected, and really positive. So I am happy to support and see how we can better contribute and bring more people from the grassroots and bring this plan into actualization, and also maybe also connect with various members of our secretariat outside Africa also to see how they could contribute to this. Thank you so much. And I'll pass it to Pauline.
Thank you very much. Since I'm on transit, I would love to use the chat box. And I was actually writing something on how we will get involved, and maybe if we will have another session where we deep dive into understanding it more, and also like generally the capacity. Are we coming in to mobilize people? Are we coming in to check the awareness out there, or how exactly are we coming in?
Absolutely. There are three branches to this. There's awareness, there's activism, and there's business. So and the activism is the glue that connects the two together, the other two together. And then it's just kind of like, think of it as an arrow. The activism spearheads it, and the other two supports it. And so that's in a short sort of answer. And then we're working a bit more on exactly how. And there is, there's the important essence of this is that we're doing it because this is what gives us joy. This is what the planet is calling on us, and responding to it is what we do. I think there's too much of trying to say there's a crisis that it has forgotten why we respond to the crisis. We respond more than because there's a crisis. We respond because that is our better self. And that is where the activism leads. So that's kind of my first brief answer to that. And then more specifically, then within each moment, each event, we will work out on exactly how that comes along.
Pauline, okay, I think she's on transit. She can communicate through the chat part. We also have Univa. Univa, if you could just say hi to us. Yeah.
Hello everyone, I'm Univa. I'm a member of the Spiceoria organization and I am very happy to be here. David, thank you very much for your presentation. It was very enlightening and I can't wait to see what you are also going to come up with, because one thing that you said is true. We all love the planet and we're here to make it better because it's the only one that we have.
All right, thank you so much, guys. This was just to try to enlighten us about what is it all about. We still have really a long way to go, but we will be calling on to more meetings and do a lot of engagement. Currently, we are actually doing a rally campaign to connect all young people across the globe to see how we can be able to come and support transformational ownership. So thank you. Back to you, David. Maybe if there's anything you need to add up before maybe you end. Thank you all.
Thank you for your time. Thank you, Univa, especially. I know it's very late for you. I know it's late for you, Pauline, and Ashley as well, and you're traveling as well. So let's pause it here, as you say. Let's have more calls. As you can see, I'm writing out that campaign plan. We've got that document. We have some very detailed stuff. Richard, who works with me, we're going to start writing some finance stuff to approach that business world. We've been talking to people. Many people. I spent this morning talking with a gentleman who's from Pakistan who works in the oil and gas industry in Houston, and is saying, look, you know, he really sees it. He sees the devastation in his home. He sees the business on the other side, and this is an approach that allows all of us to be reconciled together. It's not to say we somehow have to single out anyone as being evil or otherwise, but as a community, we come together, and those who choose not to are exiled away. And we go back into that part. Are you together with the planet and listen to the call of the planet, or do you want to exile yourself away? That's the choice that we make. And that's what this allows us to do, to make that choice. So thank you, Kaka, for calling this. If it's okay, I would like to say good night to everybody and close the meeting.
Good night, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.